indoba sifike kulo destination yobomi bethu ngokokwethu kwenza nangokokwethu ukuthanda. So while we have said that, we've also got a benefit of hindsight. So ndime apha knowing that I have an unfair advantage to, you know, to the average of audience, in that I have maybe 15 years ahead. So everybody's got own race, right? So I have got a head start. Uba ningathi angumapha endleleni phambi kwetruck kwi-freeway, ubani onovuma? No one. But it's never happened to you, but you know that if you actually stand in front of the truck, it's going to crush you. So a benefit of hindsight is exactly what you get from the verse as well. Let's take wisdom. Hindsight gives us wisdom. Abanye abantu bebekhe bangaphambili lezinto zikhe zenzeka zisinike understanding lentoba ii-decisions esizenzayo akunyanzelekanga into yoba zonke izinto mazenzeke kuthi ukuze sikwazi into yoba masiphume ngolu hlobo okanye ngolu hlobo. Ujona waginya inhlanzi, so we already know into yoba if you go a direction that you think it's not in line or in alignment with what God wants for you, you're already going a different direction. So that's hindsight. Into eyenzekileyo, so sijonge kuyo in retrospect. So before I say anything, one, I'll apologize if I offend. Sometimes we are contrary in views. So if asivumelani okanye ndithethe into ebheke ecaleni, it's all meant in good faith. Okwesibini, none of this is easy. So we can stand here and talk and share experiences. None of this is easy. So that's the first start. I want to say, while I will share my experiences and maybe a little bit of principles, none of it is easy. So I think that's a very good starting point for us to know. And number two, we can actually make progress in ways that do not seem possible to us right now, as long as we have faith and belief. Faith means believing in something that's beyond what you currently see or currently touch. We have, for us who believe, we've got faith in Jesus Christ as a Savior. We are not necessarily touching Him, but we can see His around us, right? So believe in our own selves as well. There might be things that we know are not visible to us right now, but the fact that we believe in them, we can then reach our own life's destination. So Ningubani, I think that is the first starting point. I will not dwell so much on that because I have, as I said, I have an advantage of 15, 20 years to some of you of hindsight. I grew up in a family where education was really valued. I grew up today is Father's Day, right? I grew up to a single mother, Sibatatu, and a whole lot of extended family within our home. But one thing that was important is that education was valued. So that was one advantage that I had. I grew up in an environment where education was valued. Number two, I was raised by a village. Ndikhule kwi-environment apho wonke umuntu ebeyijongile indlela endikhula ngayo. Ndinefamily enkulu, sinokuthi nefamily enkulu, ndinomalume, ndino-aunty, ndinomakazi, ndinofamily yankulu. So wonke umuntu lapho kuloo family bendikhathalele. Ukhula kwami bezingekho i-Father's Day, so but the most important thing is everybody in the village was my father, so I don't necessarily then needed to have one person or a father figure in Wimbam. I had many people who were father figures in Wimbam. Abanye ngizalani nabo, abanye andibazi nobazi ngoku because xa ndikhule apho i-community i-interested into yoba abanye abantu bakhula njani okanye badevelopha njani. So on that point, if there is somebody that's not related to you, that's part of your village, that's part of the church, that's part of your support system that's offering you support, embrace that support, because it means somebody's adding value to your life in a way that you only recognize in the future. But in the future, that is something that we look at in hindsight and say, actually, so as a starting point, I will just say, while we can actually have motivation and inspiration, it's about steps every day. Nobody reminds you to wake up over subuso, brush your work, and look clean and look nice. It's because over the years you've developed that habit over and over and over. So it means even for success or for things that we want to achieve, it's about every day, it's about today. Yesterday doesn't matter, it's gone. The past has no power over you today. It has an influence of how you got here, but it has no power. Sonke silapha sikhethile uvuka ekuseni sathi sizawuhamba siye enkonzweni sihambe siyomamela i-presentation organized by coordinators. So that means you made a conscious decision. Ukhethile wena ngokwakho uba ndiya apha ngoku uhleli umamela usenochoose uphumwa. So that means the past 5 minutes doesn't matter. What matters is what you do ngoku. Right? So every second that passes becomes irrelevant in your life. What matters is what you do ngoku. So what does it mean? It means let's start building habits that make us better. We build muscles. Okay, when I exercise, you build muscles. I want to bodybuilders. I will do one day you gym, figure bakhona abantu abayafike baye ejimini one day into ame isipilini sayithenga ngoba manje awuboni kwalo, right? You need to build a muscle every day. The fact that akho ukukhumbuzayo every day into yoba you must brush your teeth, you must wash your face, it means yonke leminyaka you've been able to build that habit. So if you build on a daily basis habits that take you a step closer to who you want to be is the most important thing. If you choose to start music, chess, or any extramural activity or ikhethayo, it means uzawuqala ungazi into. So let's be open to learning and not knowing. The biggest challenge is starting and then be consistent in that habit. I look at success as a marathon that's consisted of sprints. So as seconds in ngazo are sprints, like a relay. So life is almost like a series of relays in a long marathon. So while it's a long journey, every decision and every action is a sprint. You may succeed now, you may fail, but yourself, you hand it over to the next action. You're running a marathon by yourself, but you're also running a sprint by yourself. You're running a relay by yourself. So that means you take it from yesterday and you say, what do I do today? Right? With the passion that I have today, and then I pass it forward to myself tomorrow. Right? And today I might have not succeeded in achieving what I wanted to do today, but then what about tomorrow? So tomorrow I take the person and I said, yesterday it doesn't matter because I didn't get my time in the sprint, but today I'm going to set a new target for myself. So that is really important. And one thing that is really important, and I take nothing from this term of excellence, life is a series of small passes and small failures. Today you go this way, today you go that way, but what matters is you do not give up. So it's a series of failures and successes, failures and passes, failures and successes. Now my first fail, as I said, now I grew up in an environment where I used to think that passing is the only thing that I was able to achieve. You know, standard 9, so I grew up doing standards, so I gave up my age. Standard 9, I failed to see course. Scores, yes, scores. So if you fail this course as the first language, you fail. Believe it or not, you fail this course, entire class, now from 190 in everything. But that was also a supplementary exam, that was a September exam. But it gave me a wake-up call to say, actually, it's not only about passing, it's about all-roundedness. I had focused my attention on everything else, in maths, in sciences, and everything else that I thought was important, and I thought this course on their size, but it also needs attention. So roundedness, so even on subjects, apart from the fact that we're talking about your whole roundedness in life, about personal balance, academic balance, spiritual balance, and all the other balances. Subjects, if you focus your attention on one, there's a chance that you might miss one, even the ones that you're confident about. So that also taught me the balance. So one thing that's important for us as young people in our environment is that we run our own race, right? So comparing yourself to others steals the joys for the lessons that you're having today for who you want to be. Ngexesha usakhulayo usazama uzi-understand ukuba zintoni endizithandayo, zintoni endinokuzi-achieve, zintoni endinoya kuzo ebomini. If you're comparing yourself to the other, one, you take away the opportunity to understand yourself for who you are. And number 2, you become an unhappy person. Because there will always be greater people and lesser people than yourself in everything. Whether it's about money, whether it's about social status, whether it's about height, whether it's about entirely. So the fact that I want to be appropriately to here means I already see something, hey, this guy, but I want to be like him. And every day I wake up and think, yeah, but hey, now let me try what he's doing. We can learn from other people, that's important. We can take wisdom from other people, that's important. We cannot be other people. We can only be ourselves. So to compare ourselves with other people will take away the opportunity for us to learn about who we really are, and it will make us unhappy. That's really important. So comparing yourself to others is a stealer of joy. Zonke ezi zinto zakuzi-enjoya phaa udlala isport, uba ungugolkeeper, ufuna udlala phaa uba usistriker, ufuna uba sistriker, you forget that actually you are the best goalie there is. Ubhizi uba hayi ufuna uzama phaa. Start to understand whether you really can be that, or you really want that, or you're just comparing yourself because the other guy is scoring more goals than you are. Let's move away from things that hold us back through the eyes of other people. So what does that mean? Most of the time we judge ourselves, compare ourselves to others. Most of the time it's not the things that come from us. It's the things that we perceive other people to be thinking about us. So let me put it differently. If I pick anyone to come and stand here and share something, naturally somebody will be scared. And we right? And that plays itself most of the time in our lives because we are worried about what other people think about us. Naturally, that's something that's important because we live in a system, in a society where we've got other people, but other people talk about us, and sometimes not positive things, sometimes not great things about us. But why does it matter what other people think about us when we've got what we think about ourselves? It's a difficult thing. I said in the beginning that it's not an easy thing. But if we start to build a muscle to say, I actually do not mind what other people think about us. Make an example. Can I just take it? I'll sanitize after. So yeah, I'm going to study. Your phone, now what did I do? Why? I'm worried about the so for the Sunday, they mustn't see me. What does that do? It means I start having lesser and lesser confidence about my own abilities to study for myself. Because suddenly, it's about what they think and what they will say about me when I go and study. But if I own that and say, guys, I'm happy to be back today, but I have a clarity of where I want to be.
Yeah.
If you go to church for the Bible, guys shouldn't see you on Sabbath. Well, it's fine, but you'll have lesser and lesser confidence in your own spiritual growth. Right? Because I shouldn't be seen. I shouldn't be seen descends into it. So start owning up and having lesser and lesser. It's not going to go away, but have a lesser and lesser care about what other people perceive of ourselves. Because what we do, we internalize what we think other people should think about us and start acting on the show. So I start acting, but what's going to happen next time? Next time you're just not going to go because it's uncomfortable, it's incongruent for you to be seen as not a bar, but you are acting like a bar, as you've perceived, right? So you start saying, I'm signed, I go to classes because I have to always pass la magic on a Sunday. So if you start owning up to the things that you believe are your own and will change you, then what other people perceive will not matter. We live in the age of social media where we want to be seen, right? And everybody must have followers, and etc., etc. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the minute that starts to change what you truly believe about yourself versus what you think people should believe about you, it's a problem. Because you are no longer acting for your own purpose and for your own actions, but you're acting for what you think other people should have. All right. I already spoken about failure. One thing that's also important is that we are always going to have a challenge in one area, and it's always going to give us a curveball. I love the way Mrs. Longtree spoke because she spoke about her challenges in a way not to say I was a victim of circumstances, but she spoke in a way to say I have triumphed, notwithstanding the challenges that I had. So never use your current situation, especially your current challenge, as a way to give yourself an excuse to not try. I also had a similar situation, so let me just take a step back to explain. I went to a boarding school. I have a twin brother. So I found one day was on board in the Mazda put. And then Dr. Jimmy now I have a twin brother. So my twin brother and I went to a boarding school. And when we got there, we found other kids who had lots of things and coming from well-off families, which for us was something to aspire towards. And we started, being friends with them, trying to act out like they do, like walking out with the popular kids and right? The example that I said, that's a stealer of joy, right? And over time, that became an issue because suddenly we can realize, well, hey, fees up, as long as it was even now, but it's busy. Fully take his Nike, and that became a challenge in that it made Umama unhappy because she also started to see her own flaws. But hey, I can't provide for my kids in the way that will make them happy, which is wrong, right? Because she's trying her best and she's done what she could. So over time, you start recognizing and realizing your actions will have a bigger impact than just yourself. So your actions, what you do, will start to have a bigger impact than what you do. You are self-focused, right? It's about you, but you've forgotten to are affected by what you do. And I think just this point about the current situation. So if you start then looking at your current situation as a negative thing that you use as an excuse, you stop doing things, you stop trying because you're like, you already have an excuse. An excuse is always there, I can tell you that. If you want to have an excuse, you always have it. But how beautiful it is to come and stand in a platform like this to say, I have been able to achieve 1, 2, 3, notwithstanding everything else. It's a better way to talk about your challenge. You're not saying, I'm not able to do it because I've got this challenge, I've got that challenge. You know it, you carry it, and it's there. It's heavy on you, but you try nonetheless. But when you've achieved, you can speak about that challenge so positively that everybody will recognize, this person has really achieved. It's a small achievement sometimes, but the challenge has been so immense that it's worth an achievement to have been able to pass that small little thing with such a challenge. So sometimes we look at achievements as these big, grand things that we achieve. So my life story is that I've been able to learn to celebrate the small successes. Celebrate the small successes, because if you do, you start saying, oh, today I woke up, thank you God, I have life today. That's the first success. It's like, I didn't do it myself, but today I'm alive. I make up my own bed and I clean my environment. Even if nothing else happens, at least I've achieved one thing today. So then that way we stop using what we know. I mean, all of us have challenges, different kinds of challenges, and a lot of others, a lot more challenges than the others. But we don't necessarily use that as an excuse to not try. Because the minute you start doing that, there will always be challenges for us to not do anything. So, notwithstanding the challenges we have, there will always be a way for us to go. So, resilience. So, resilience is about and keep trying, right? So how do you build your own resilience? One of the things you build resilience is to learn after every success to sit back and think, how am I going to move forward? One friend of mine, who's now at UCT, young chap. He's a friend because I was introduced to him through the Allen Gray Opis Foundation. So there's a mentorship program, so he's a mentee. So last year he was doing PDA or postgraduate diploma in accounting. So that next year he trains to be an accountant. And he was funded by a company, all his studies, and they're already giving him a job. So this year or last year, he was preparing everything to just go this year to a job. And he's never failed in his life. He got a flat in Joburg, because the place is in Joburg, and then he moved there in December to start preparing for the working year. And then he failed one subject at the end of last year. And then he had to change his whole life upside down, because he has to repeat the entire course. The company that funded him said, "We're happy to let you go, you don't have to pay the bursary, but you no longer have a job with us." Now, his whole life has been built on this frame that I am actually going to do my postgraduate diploma in accountancy this year. And next year I have a job, and I already have arranged accommodation in Joburg. I'm going to be staying in Joburg, and I want to already start to stay in December, so that I can start to learn the environment, I can know a few people. And then in January, results came. He has to go back to KZN and stay with his family. And he has to repeat the whole entire year, including the courses he's passed. So what does it mean? It means if he has, in his life, he had not built a muscle of resilience to say, even if he challenges, I will still find a way to transcend that. Otherwise, at that point, his life was still, if he was thinking his life in the eyes of other people, because I've always spoken this way. So my life basically is still. But because we spoke and he shared, he had built resilience to say, I know that things will not always work my way. So let me sit back and think and look at the positives. The positive is that this company funded me from first year until now, and they're not expecting me to pay. Number two, they give me a freedom to go and work for the company that I choose to work for. Number three, I had passed all the subjects. Actually, it's one subject that I really need to work hard for this year. The rest I will still work hard for, but that's positive. Number three, four, as positives. You see, you can look at so many positives. I get to stay with my family in KZN that I haven't stayed with in a long time. I can still be able to study because kufundwa remotely these days. So a whole lot of positives. So resilience is also just looking at a glass being half full rather than half empty. So every time, we build resilience, and again I said this is like a series of sprints as opposed to just one long marathon. So there's a series of sprints that we do so that we can get to the destination. So just getting to conclusion. Also, resilience is about kindness. Being kind to your own self. You're trying. Yes, you're not succeeding, you're a failure. Hey, I've been doing this day and night. You know how much you're trying. Give yourself that credit. Yes, I am trying. It's not happening, but I am trying. Sometimes we beat ourselves a little bit too much because we expect a lot from ourselves. But sometimes because other people around us expect a lot of ourselves, Funeka upase metric this year because funeka uyophangela sidinga wena apha endlini uzisa imali, right? Pressure around us. The pressure of our friends, She's going to UCT, she's going to VETS, nanza yaphi. Akho mali ekhaya, andifumenanga bhasari, right? Let's be kind to our own selves, because if we put ourselves in those positions, we will not be able to, to get that resilience when things really become hard. So if we are used to giving ourselves kindness, when these things happen, we will be able to be kind to ourselves to then be able to think and look at what options we have in front of us. Let's be kind to other people, guys. People around you. If I'm good at maths, let me spare a few minutes to share a method with the next person. Right? I said when I started, I was raised by a village. It's because those people around me, they were kind. I remember one day when there was a guy who who came to my family. It's not your time. Everybody's got their own race. So let it not be a confusion first, because I think it starts with the confusion. The pressure comes after the confusion, because once you're confused, then you feel pressure to also start trying to eat your seeds. What does it mean? I saw you open your verse. So if you look at 2 Corinthians, 9, verse 10. So why do we need to have seeds? Why do we need to take care of the seeds? The seeds don't matter if we're still keeping them in the cupboard. We must go siyolima. Sifake imbewu yethu every day. You guys coming here are watering your own seeds that you've planted. So every day uyankcenkceshela. And then sikhula isityalo, it's not yet ready. You're like, oh, okay, this is spinach, it's coming right. When it's time to then harvest, you harvest. And you will know it, no one else. So I won't tell you what your harvest is going to be. But don't check next door, like you harvest. Your own seed is still growing, is still in the nurturing stage. So don't let other people who have things going for them, or be jealous because the other person has gotten a bursary now, you haven't yet gotten yours. Keep watering, it's coming. So, Gugulethu, do you have it?
Yeah.
Can you just please read it? Because I think it's important to know why we have seeds, and why for me, I had to take that and look, what does it actually mean to have a seed?
9 verses 10 says, now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food, supply and multiply the seed you have sown and increase the fruits of your righteousness.
Okay,
verse 10.
That's fine. So it actually multiplies. So it actually multiplies. And you will actually, it says here, eat the fruit of your righteousness. So in interpretation, it says what we're doing, we're not doing it for ourselves. We're doing it for other people. We're not necessarily doing it for our own selves. So the seeds that you are watering every day, you're nurturing, you will see one day that is going to have a much bigger impact than just yourself. So for me, that is something that I did not know until I was much further in life, to realize that I always had this thing that I want to work with people. I want to support where I can. But I never thought of it as the work that I do needs to have an impact on other people. And that's always been the driver of why I do the things I do. So that brings me to the end. And I think what you need to just remember, celebrate the small wins. Write things down, talk to yourself. I think the best way to talk to yourself is to write things down. When you're feeling good, because sometimes we write things down or we ponder when things aren't going well. When things are going very well, you're nailing things and it's going well, ponder. Sit down and think and wonder, what did I do right? So that you can continue. And so that you can realize that it's not a fluke, that you have it in you to do it. When things aren't going well, you can revert back to that time where you said, I can actually do it. For me, I have forgotten what it means to fail, because every day I try something else and it fails. I try this and it fails. But I don't ponder much on failure apart from saying, now I've failed, how do I move forward? That's the only ponder on failure I have. The ponder I have every day is on success, to say, what did I do right? What do I need to continue doing so that I can go that path? And education is really about learning about everything. So it's already been said by Mrs. Nomshi. it's not about to be paid, guys. It's about learning in totality, learning about ourselves, learning about the environment. Take time to read stuff. I know we've got phones and social media and all these things that we need to be up. It's okay to not know everything that's happening in the social media space. It's okay. Take the time to read a book, take time to read your own material. But education is a whole rounded thing. It's not just the academics. Yes, that's important and that's going to take us far, but that's not the only thing. So, it's funny. Magazine, Kili magazine, powerful article, because that way it opens a certain perspective of your brain that you wouldn't have ordinarily had. And I don't know how much time I've taken, but I hope I've not taken more than I needed to. If I have, I already apologized up front. I wish you guys all the best, and I know, and I've said, you do have what it takes. Own up your own story and keep trying every day. Remember why you're doing what you're doing. Other people don't matter, for real. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Remember other people who are eating their harvest, that's not yours. Ask for help, seek support. If there's anything that's challenging, say to the guy next door, hey, I'm struggling here. It's okay. Everywhere you go, seek support. It doesn't help to act like everything is fine when it's not. So make sure you use your support system. There are people who want to support us, including this platform here, so let's use it. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you guys for listening in. I'm happy to answer questions as well as we've done, but other than that, also happy to engage beyond here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Truly. Thank you so much, Nomhle. Sister Nomhle, I really appreciate the words of wisdom that you have kindly shared with us. I don't know if anyone has questions that we'd like to ask to our guests this morning. I know that, from my side, that both of your careers are quite niche, like they're very specialized. We are told as students to become doctors, to become, nurses, teachers, accountants, and lawyers, etc. The typical career paths, we can say, but you're in the health field, but it's audiology, I thought doctors are the ones who deal with ears and things like that. And it's very specialized, you are in the sustainability space, infrastructure, renewable energy. How do we as high school students, or people who don't know anything about these fields, how do we even aspire to get into the fields?
Okay, I'll start. So, imfundo ifana nokutya. Leya ngesixhosa, imfundo ifana nokutya. Apha emzimbeni wakho soze ubone lamngqusho ukutya izolo lamvumo, but it's actually part of your system. It nourishes your body. So knowledge is part of your broader understanding of the world and your broader understanding of your career. So once ifundiswe indoba masicinge indoba sizawuba zizinto ezithile ezi-specific, there is a much bigger horizon, or much greater horizon than what we may actually have at our own disposal, in our own knowledge. So let's be open to that possibility. That's the first thing. So open for possibility that things are much broader than what we know. I often don't like to talk about my own career because I don't necessarily want that to look like that's everybody's path. or umuntu uzohamba the same way I did. But because you asked, let me say, I studied analytical chemistry, and I also wanted to go to UCT, but because I can't go to Komali and Sibabini, from the university, and we had to look for options. So we went to CPUT, I went to Cape Tech, and my brother went to Pentech, now CPUT. And I studied analytical chemistry, I studied BTech, chemistry. Then I worked in industrial consulting. So industrial consulting, Ulapo, for example, clients with industry. These side problems or challenges nazo with materials, either plastics or izinto abasebenza ngazo, bafuna understand by problems in umzekelo like packaging. So mhlambi, let's say ubisi ikhathini yobisi yavuleka while it's still in transit okanye while still in the shelves. So how do you create more adhesion, bamayincamathele, njalo njalo. So that's how I started. And then I got an opportunity to work for the University of Stellenbosch. The University of Stellenbosch, I ended up actually having to choose to study again while I work as well. So basically studying through university. And at that point, equal exam, we were getting really nice jobs, Sasol, big industries, and they were driving nice cars. But at the time, I said, probably I will get there, and I want to get there. But because I had a much, broader vision to say, there are things that I still want to learn and do that I think this opportunity offers me. And that's what I want to focus on. So that's why for me, this quote, don't let those eating their harvest confuse you confuse you to eat your seeds. It actually happened for me before I first knew the quote. Because at that point I could hold back to say, yes, there are much bigger opportunities out there, it's called but what I really want to do is to get into a career where I feel my contribution is valued. So, and number two, it relates to what I would like to know, especially around the energy. So, the energy, etc. I can tell the story another day. So, at the time, the journey I was taking didn't look like it was taking me there. So there was this opportunity that could take me there. So I decided to hold back and go in there. And then I became curious. So let's remain curious to answer the question. So I'm trying to answer the question in this narration as well. To say, let's remain curious. So if we read and we hear people that are doing audiology, right? What is this audiology? What do I need to study? If you hear something unusual, and sometimes these things will happen that you will find things either in print media or on your TV. Be curious. Use your Google. You guys Google a lot. Go to Google and say, what is this thing? And even if there's something that looks aspirational to you, to say, how do I get there? What is the path? So my path is not necessarily a conventional one. So I ended up heading to where I studied masters in chemistry. And then later on I decided, actually, I want to then be able to work in business that deals with these things. So I had to go and study again. The long and short of it is, I then carved my own path to become curious. While I was studying again, I was saying, when I'm doing my assignments, when I'm doing my research, let me find the things that I really want to know. Then I could speak to the people in industry. And then I could understand who's who, right? And being a person in chemistry, I didn't understand anything about business. So when I worked for a company called Monty Packaging, we were always matched up with about marketing. So every little idea, scenario, everything that we thought was good was always met with skepticism. Is this going to sell? How is it going to work in the market? Who's going to buy it? How much are they going to buy it for? We're like, yeah, it works. It works, Nancy. The rest you go figure. But in the end, we had to be more knowledgeable in saying we can sit in the conversation and argue both sides And so that was my motivation for me to then go and study again business. Then I could speak more on the technical side, but I could also bring the commercial understanding. I could, as ulwazi lwebusiness, to say, yes, technically ndiyayazi iyasebenza le nto, kodwa ngolwazi lwebusiness lukhona to say ingathengiseka kanje le nto njalo njalo. And that's how I ended up also, when I worked, I then decided, actually I don't want to work for much longer. I want to start my own thing where I'm able to carve my own path. So that's how we started the 4th of Africa as well, to say, okay, where do we focus on the most? In business, we see the focus is only commercial. Only commercial in that good projects in Kuzo, everything that has to do with environmental, so the environment or social aspects was always relegated. Now I know where I come from. When I sit in those conversations and you're talking about Abantu community or people, you are talking to me. So every time you're saying this discussion is not important, you are saying I'm also not important. So for a longer period, I said I could not then be sitting in those conversations and accept Indoba, the community aspect or the social aspect would be relegated, and then I can sit in the same conversation and say we are making progress. So I tried to make changes internally. At some point I said, okay, I might fail, but let's go and start our own thing and try and implement the ideas that we have. And in the end, that's how we started our own business. But that is almost like a path that was unique to me. Believe in what you have and your path will start emerging. So yesterday doesn't matter. It's influenced how you've come to where you are today. So what matters is what steps you're taking now going forward. So how do we then get to find knowledge about different careers? Fortunately, EUCT is one of the institutions, because I've been there. I know they've got very elaborate career guidance magazines and they're online. Fortunately, the recent one, I also have an article that I was asked to contribute there, so you see a familiar face. So what I would do, I don't know about Nazi WhatsApp for Bona, but what I can do, I can share the links to those online magazines. They speak about different careers. So go out and search career fields. Fortunately, Ulwazi is available online. You can find it. There's nothing that you can't find online these days, as long as you are curious and interested. Yes, I hear this thing about, you will be kind of sort of expected to become doctors, and I also at some point wanted to be a doctor. And I sat with Malume Wam, who was a teacher, he's no longer alive, and we argued. He was saying, your mom is taking you to a technical in Nanfulia University, and what he meant is he wanted to go to university and he never had a chance, and he wanted to make sure we get what he never had. But it was still a question, right? And so sometimes those things come from other people's perspectives on what they wish for you. And men, they're well-meaning, but sometimes you have to find what is practical. And I ended up going to university, to Stellenbosch University, but that was the path that I decided to take over time. So if I end namhlanje, ilizwe liphilanga. Izakwenzeka ngomso. And the older you grow, you become more clearer into my own kind of right? When we are younger, we're influenced by what's around us, but also what we see. If you are there, we are experienced, and you start to get to see. As I said, don't allow other people to have an influence on how you grow and what you like and what you like. Over time, you will know, you will really know what you are liking and what you want to do. And that doesn't mean to end there. That will change in the future as well. So allow yourself to grow with that as well, and then move to other things that take your interest. So yes, it's possible to know about other careers, and especially for this group, for you guys, it's even much more possible to go in many different routes. There's digital stuff, there's technology, there's all these things that I don't even know, right? But that's what's available to you now, to be able to explore and to be able to try. And it doesn't mean if it doesn't work out, this is the end. You can say, I want to be this big thing, astrophysics, whatever, it doesn't matter. If it resonates with you, if you know, then I'm working again. Find out more about it, and then take the steps to go towards it. So there is no limit to what you can do. Even if there are other things that might seem a little bit more achievable now, but go for the biggest and see where the world takes you. Thanks, that's my
I'm glad you spoke about curiosity, because it's important to be curious, because when you are curious, you want to know more, and then you get to know more. A prospectus, I don't think it's called that anymore, because we had actual physical books that you had to go read through. But the internet con, that is the quickest way to learn about careers akon, is to go and do your research. Humble funda, what is there that's available. And having said that, it's important to speak to people. And by speaking to people is, if you know someone who's in a specific area or in a specific space, what are you doing? But what are your friends and the people around you doing? Because when I got to varsity, I learned about things I'd never heard of before. People are studying how to build robots, like actual robots, not traffic lights. People are studying to be this, studying to be that. I know that, but I'm able to pass it on to someone else. So speak to people that are ahead of you. What are the things that you are seeing? What are the things that people are doing around you? And then share that information now. Another way to have a niche profession. So AARMY is created as a specific profession. Egabuti, he created his. And that's very important to realize that you can create a specific field for yourself. And I learned this from Umamngane. Umamngane is working, she did economics. And then after she did economics, she did masters in diplomacy, and she created and she added and she did this and she did this. Because as she was going on, she was learning Ninte's Ning. And when you add things to the base that you have, you create something new. Currently, what she has created is now the standard. She's the only one who has it. Being a guy's so whatever career you do, even if it means you want to be a doctor, there's not one kind of doctor. You become a doctor and then you add things to become a specific type of doctor, because then you stand out to say, this is what I'm a specialist in and this is what I have knowledge mostly on. So if you don't find a career that is specific, create your own one. And you can only create it when you know what's going on around you. So wherever you go, okay, yinle. Oh, okay, what's that? Why would you do that? Oh, okay, how can I combine things to make it work for me? Sometimes if you get varsity and you do a general bachelor's degree, it's not a problem. The problem comes when you want to find a job with a general bachelor's, because there's no job that is general. So you take that base and you say, that's general. What did I like? What did I excel in? And you build on top of that. And when you build, at the end of the day, you have something that no one else has. And when you are able to provide that, everyone is looking for you. So if you can't find a career that is niche or specific in that prospectus or the online magazine, create it. But you can only create something when you know what's going on around you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Are there any other questions? I know we have Cicely. Oh, Cicely, good question.
Thank you. Umbuzo wam is on the, I see on the poster, Methuli Mbanjwa, Director, Forethought Africa. Now the name Forethought Africa, I'm assuming that's a company or NGO. I'm curious on the name, because Africa isn't thought in the same picture as being four thinkers in a way. There's this picture, this meme that has been on Facebook, social media, where it shows Bure kids and what they buy with their money, the types of cars they buy, and then it shows what black children buy. Utwatinas Tenga, or G7, BMW M5 with our first big salaries, but the white kids, they buy tractors, you know, almost to sell the idea that, okay, black kids don't think for the future, they actually think for the now. You know, you want to buy the fast cars, the best cars, the shiny cars. But the white community or Bure kids in that picture, you know, they can foresee, okay, maybe let me buy things that can help me create wealth and generate wealth for the future and sacrifice my present enjoyment, you know. So I'm curious, how did you come to the name Forethought African? And number two, how can we encourage forethinking or foresight, especially in our black communities where we see someone who's highly successful as Umto Onemoto is Mizayo, Shalagui, double story, and not really wealth creation per se, but being rich. How do we change that view? Okay, let's not aim to be rich, but let's aim to be wealth creators. How do we encourage forethought in African kids?
Well, it's a lot of questions. But let me answer the one that's, or at least try and answer it in two ways. One, so our journey with my business partner, her name is Maschaba Mabilu. So she's an actuarial graduate, so she worked in actuarial environment for top consultancies and also the banks, including Nedbank, I think KPMG, for NERSA, etc. So she was really good with numbers, but she felt the numbers that she was crunching meant nothing if that didn't change her people's environment. And when we met at the industry, we met at forums where it was the forums where not a lot of people, especially executives, go to because they are just about, you know, community, you know, the social aspect, the transformation aspect. That's not interesting for people who are interested in the legal stuff and the financial stuff. So she was working in that space. So she was an ED manager for her company, economic development manager. I was in project management. I was developing renewable energy projects. So I was interested, or at least my role was relating to finance, project management, technical aspects, permitting. So the more physical and sort of material things as far as developing an infrastructure project is concerned. But I was also interested to know when these projects are developed and are done, what happens to the communities where they're being developed. So that was outside of my scope of work, but I still decided to sit in industry forums where these things are being discussed because that is what I was interested in. So because that was not part of my role and what I was employed for, there was a limitation to what I could do as far as it's concerned, especially limited only as far as industry forums are concerned. So I said, well, let's have a discussion, you know, with Master Chamba to say what else can we do, because this was also an increasing frustration of ours. She was leaving her company, and I was intending also to leave to say what can we do. So we said, we brainstormed, especially to say what do we call ourselves, because one, we want to differentiate what our message is. So how do we communicate what we really want to do? We are saying these projects should not just be done because there's a compliance requirement. So basically, urhulumente uyafuna into yoba abantu bajonge into yoba babenefita njani projects. So mayingabi into eqhutywayo ebantwini. So it shouldn't just be something that businesses do because they're expected to do. It should be something that's inherent
in that prospectus or the online magazine created. But you can only create something when you know what's going on around you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Are there any other questions? I know we have Cicely. Oh, Cicely, request.
Thank you. Umbuzo wami is on the, I see on the poster, Methuli Mbanjwa, Director, Forethought Africa. Now the name Forethought Africa, I'm assuming that's a company or NGO. I'm curious on the name, because Africa isn't thought in the same picture as being for thinkers in a way. There's this picture, this meme that has been on Facebook, social media, where it shows Bure kids and what they buy with their money, the types of cars they buy, and then it shows what black children buy. Utwatinas Tenga, or G7, BMW M5 with our first big salaries, but the white kids, they buy tractors, you know, almost to sell the idea that, okay, black kids don't think for the future, they actually think for the now. You know, you want to buy the fast cars, the best cars, the shiny cars. But the white community or Bure kids in that picture, you know, they can foresee, okay, maybe let me buy things that can help me create wealth and generate wealth for the future and sacrifice my present enjoyment, you know. So I'm curious, how did you come to the name Forethought African? And number two, how can we encourage forethinking or foresight, especially in our black communities where we see someone who's highly successful as Umto Onemoto is Mizayo, Shalagui, double story, and not really wealth creation per se, but being rich. How do we change that view? Okay, let's not aim to be rich, but let's aim to be wealth creators. How do we encourage forethought in African kids?
Well, that's a lot of questions. But let me answer the one that's, or at least try and answer it in two ways. One, so our journey with my business partner, her name is Maschaba Mabilu. So she's an actuarial graduate, so she worked in actuarial environment for top consultancies and also the banks, Nedbank, I think KPMG, for NERSA, etc. So she was really good with numbers, but she felt the numbers that she was crunching meant nothing if that didn't change her people's environment. And when we met at the industry, we met at forums where it was the forums where not a lot of people, especially executives, go to because they are just about, you know, community, you know, the social aspect, the transformation aspect. That's not interesting for people who are interested in the legal stuff and the financial stuff. So she was working in that space. So she was an ED manager for her company, economic development manager. I was in project management. I was developing renewable energy projects. So I was interested, or at least my role was relating to finance, project management, technical aspects, permitting. So the more physical and sort of material things as far as developing an infrastructure project is concerned. But I was also interested to know when these projects are developed and are done, what happens to the communities where they're being developed. So that was outside of my scope of work, but I still decided to sit in industry forums where these things are being discussed because that is what I was interested in. So because that was not part of my role and what I was employed for, there was a limitation to what I could do as far as it's concerned, especially limited only as far as industry forums are concerned. So I said, well, let's have a discussion, you know, with Masachaba to say what else can we do, because this was also an increasing frustration of ours. She was leaving her company, and I was intending also to leave, to say what can we do. So we said, we brainstormed, especially to say what do we call ourselves, because one, we want to differentiate what our message is. So how do we communicate what we really want to do? We are saying these projects should not just be done because there's a compliance requirement. So basically, urhulumente uyafuna into yoba abantu bajonge into yoba babenefita njani these projects. So mayingabi into eqhutywayo ebantwini. So it shouldn't just be something that businesses do because they're expected to do. It should be something that's in projects. Kunyanzelekile into yoba mazenze utshintsho abo bantu bakhona, because one, they generate economic gain. So there must be some economic gain that gets derived for the community. The question is, how do we do it? And so we need to sit and think, let's have foresight to say, how do we actually do it? So when we then said, we said, okay, what do we call ourselves? We had a couple of names, but we were stuck on this foresight, and especially let's have forethought, because it's more self-explanatory to say forethought. We are thinking ahead about what we want to do. Africa, because we already had a vision to become an African-focused consultancy as opposed to just only South African-focused consultancy. So that's where the name comes from. Now coming to the bigger question that you have, so I'm going to try and answer it in chunk size. One, social media has, I'm not in social media, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but at some point I decided that it wasn't for me. And I'm not in social media, so I'm on LinkedIn because it's a professional platform. I found that the social media sometimes concocts or creates things up to create a dialogue, not with an intention to create something positive, but to agitate for the sake of likes. So even if I'm not sure what the intention of that person was, it could be well-meaning, but in the most part, a dialogue like that is well had with people who are actually, in a position to say, I have wealth, or I've created wealth, and I've chosen to buy a car versus a tractor. If you remember, this is a personal choice, right? And a personal choice means a person will determine what's good for them as an individual. And if they've determined that what is good for them as an individual is to go and lend money from Standard Bank, from whatever, to buy a car, that they so wanted to have versus a tractor, which is in agriculture something maybe they have no interest in, then that's a choice they already made. Number two, if a person is really interested in investing in agriculture and they choose to buy a car when they have means to actually buy a tractor, it already tells you that in terms of their priorities, that person is choosing something that's of a lesser priority to what they really want. So what guarantees that would have that they would succeed if their prioritization is already messed up that way? So I tend to stay away from generalizations because they have no fact and they have no basis. So when that person says, you ask them who is that, they will not tell you who has done that. Because you'll say, who is looking to invest in agriculture and they've opted to buy a car. Because what they do, they look around, they see so many people driving nice cars. On a balance of things, there are so many other white people who are buying nice cars too, by the way. And there are so many people, black people, who are investing in agriculture as well. So when we are then saying this, we have to also try to be critical in our thinking. Let's bring a fact to a fact, and then let's evaluate that fact on the basis of what's in front of us. So generalization, it's easy to say, like for example, the German school, last week apparently, the teacher was reinstated after being suspended for a week, and she had said, black people have no role models. Black people have parents, or black kids have got parents who are in prison or who are prostitutes. Now, how is that going to help anything? Yes, she might have had some experience of that, maybe, but if you ask her to bring effect to that effect, she will not, because she's generalizing. So I find generalization, especially for things like that, really important. But what is important, I think what you just said as well, is how do we as ourselves, forget about white people, how do we as ourselves own up to what we really want for ourselves as a future, right? Let's forget white people, forget people with tractors, whatever. What is it that we really want, whether as a collective or as individuals? Because you cannot impose a conviction on someone. So I can't convict somebody with their own money to go and buy a tractor when they choose to buy a Mercedes-Benz. So that is useless for me to then say, yeah, people it's their choice. They have the money, they choose, or they have the means, they have opted for it. So I think a conviction as a collective comes from inside out as opposed to something that's imposed from the external. So for me, I start with myself to say, what is it that I want to change around my own environment? What is it that I'm able to access? What is it I'm able to impart? And I use that to move forward. Another person like myself will say, come and speak to our tutorship session on a Sunday, and I'll attend, I'll honor that, I'll feel honored to come and speak, because suddenly there is a cohesive approach for how we do things. So somebody will say, well, black people don't actually do Saturday classes because they've looked outside and they've seen a lot of people, but the opposite is also true. So I think what is important is what you and I can sit and talk about. Which forums can we sit at and see what do people that want to go into agriculture need, and are they actually accessing the resources they need to go and do that? You will find in most cases the people who really want to go into different industries, especially black people, they have no access to capital and they have no access to support system for them to do that. And those are not the same people who drive Mercedes-Benz. So that's my answer, and it might not necessarily also be too factual, but it's from my point of view. Again, from our own point of view, what is it that we want to do? So it's difficult for me to create an environment where we can convict the entire black people. Black people are not homogeneous, so they're not all the same. So we are all different people, and we want different things, etc. So we always have to find the people who will think like us to do things that allow us to do those things together. I don't know if that makes sense. So the platforms for people then to invest in agriculture or mining or renewable energy or any of these industries should then be sitting on those platforms to discuss, so finding people with similar mindset to do those things together. Otherwise, if we generalize in everything, we'll also miss the point, right? That's why in all the situations, in faith, for example, Muslim people, they meet with other Muslim people, they discuss their own faith, Christians, they convene with other Christians, because you can't generalize that people don't believe, right? You start with what you can do with the people that are thinking the same way, to say, how do we then start to grow bigger with our own vision? People who want to go to Sunday tutorship sessions, they convene here, and we start to grow from here, but we can't generalize that, kids don't come to tutorship classes. So I think for me, the main purpose for which we use those things, I think they're important in that they start to get us to think critically. But then how do we practically move forward? For me, I think it's less of a bigger generalization and more specifics on how do we do it. And it will always be left to an individual and left to a choice what people choose for themselves. Yeah. Okay.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gugulethu. Thank you so much, Sis Nomhle. We have officially run out of time. I'd like to thank you both for availing yourself time out of your busy schedule to come and speak to us and encourage us and read the words you've spoken. We hope that it has not fallen on deaf ears. I definitely have taken some nuggets that I'm going to hold close to my heart, running my own race, not letting those who are eating their harvest to confuse me in eating my seeds. I really thank you for your contributions. I'm sure I speak for everyone here. Questions that came, we thank you a lot. The resources that you're going to share, please do share. Truly, if you have things to share as well, we will distribute it to everyone, that we can start learning, start asking the questions regarding our career paths, things that we perhaps have an interest in, that we can already start being curious and finding out, so that we don't wait till the end of exams in grade 11 or grade 12 before we do these things. So thank you so much everyone for coming through. Thank you so much, Lindy, for joining us as well. She was back up, by the way, to help Mrs. Nomsha out as well. Maybe we'll have you here in one of our future sessions. Guys, next week we are back at it. We're working again 9 to 12. We can